Hello dear crypto friends and welcome to this new video, and today we are going to talk about the next crypto pump and what are the conditions for this crypto pump to occur. And we will see that the Fed is currently deciding if we are going to see an insane crypto pump or not. Believe it or not, the American Central Bank, FED, will decide if Bitcoin and the whole crypto market will go higher this year and make new all-time highs, or if we will dump. Now, if we look at Bitcoin, at the long-term Bitcoin chart, we have said quite a few times already that Bitcoin is doing this kind of hidden bullish divergence, right? You see that it's in an uptrend, a very slight uptrend where we have higher lows all the time. But the RSI in the weekly is printing a hidden bullish divergence. The RSI is making lower lows. And since quite a long time, to be honest, this is like a super strong hidden bullish divergence, very long term. So this is a very strong bullish structure actually that BTC is printing. So why then is BTC not pumping? Why is the crypto market in this weird, dormant, boring state since months now? Well, this has to do with the dollar index. So last time I was saying that the dollar index in the weekly or monthly chart has reached resistance, okay? We are now trading at resistance, and it is a very strong resistance. It looks as if the dollar wants to break through this resistance, but it's not yet there. And this would mean that if the dollar manages to break through, we would be at a dollar index that hadn't been reached in 20 years, okay? In 20 years. Only in the early 2000s, 2001, has the dollar index been higher than now. And the last time it was even higher, it was in 1985, okay? So we are talking about crazy high levels here. Now we have also said that the dollar index is printing a bearish divergence because the RSI is making higher lows, whereas the price, as we can see, is higher now than it was when the RSI printed this high here. And we have found out, if we compare this to Bitcoin, that Bitcoin is only pumping when the dollar index is dumping, and vice versa. When the dollar index is having insane rallies, we can see that Bitcoin is in a downtrend. It happened every time, here, right? Here, and here. Every time when the dollar index was super low or making lows, then we had Bitcoin rallies, and when the dollar index was pumping, we had the exact opposite. And what we can see now is that the dollar index has been pumping since quite a while and very aggressively. Now, why has the dollar index been pumping? Let's look at the history of why this could be. For that, friends, we have to look at the Fed funds rate, okay? This is basically the federal interest rate. This is the interest rate which the American Central Bank, the FED, is controlling. And they have announced that they will raise the interest rates, right? And what happened the last time, if we looked at when the interest rates were starting to be raised? Well, we can see that every time we started to have a rising of the interest rates, the dollar was pumping, right? But when did it pump? It always pumped already before the interest rates actually started rising, right? Let's have a look. So this happened, for example, in the 90s, okay? In 1993, for example, the Fed funds rate started rising and the dollar started pumping earlier. And then when the Fed fund rate actually was beginning to rise, the dollar was actually dumping. What? Weird behavior, right? Then here also, the Fed fund rate was increased even more in the late 90s. What happened? The dollar was pumping like crazy. And then actually when the dollar index reached the peak, it already started dumping and was wobbling around here and then started dumping. It gets even more obvious in 2004. So the dollar makes a low here after this huge crash, right? And then the Fed announces the interest rates are going to be raised, right? And then the dollar instantly rebounds. Okay, then suddenly makes a new low after the interest rates have already started to be raised. Then makes a new high. And then when the interest rates are still not at maximum level, the dollar already starts dumping. That is amazing. And the same last time. Let's look at the last time the interest rates were aggressively raised. So the last time the interest rates were aggressively raised, what happened? Again, the same thing. The interest rates are not even really raised a lot, but only the announcement that the interest rates will be raised makes the dollar pump like a crazy maniac, okay? And then when the interest rates are actually already raised, what happens? We get this insane dump here from 2017 to 2018. And this insane dump was coincidentally the catalyst for the huge Bitcoin and crypto bull market in 2017. Yes, that is why we had the Bitcoin bull market, not only because of the halving. Yes, in 2016 there was also the halving, I think in August 2016, but it was not really pumping a lot before the dollar index started dumping like crazy. So this is always the catalyst for a huge Bitcoin rally. And since the dollar index had been pumping now like crazy since over a year now, if we look back, it's like since late 2020, early 2021, the dollar index had been pumping like crazy. That's the reason why Bitcoin is not performing well, why we don't see new all-time highs, and why we had this weird high at 60, 65, 69,000. Which is super weird for Bitcoin, because normally we would expect Bitcoin, if it has a rally, to reach a quite higher multiple of the previous all-time high, right? Normally Bitcoin reaches 10, 20 times the previous all-time high, and not only 3 times the previous all-time high. So this was strange. And now we understand why, because in 2020, the dollar index started reversing. In late 2020, it was the time when the dollar index started going up, and then in 2021 it started going up like really crazy, okay? So this is the reason why in 2021 suddenly Bitcoin came to a standstill and did not continue to pump. And if Bitcoin doesn't continue to pump, then what happens? The whole altcoin market, of course, doesn't continue to pump, because all the altcoins are just following Bitcoin, okay? So now we understand the logic why Bitcoin is not performing well. So what does this have to do now with the future and Fed rate hikes? Why is the Fed deciding if we get a rally this year? Well, the next Fed meeting is actually taking place today and tomorrow it will be announced by how many basis points the interest rate will be hiked. Okay, this is this orange line here. We are now sitting at 0.25, and everyone is expecting a rate hike of 0.5 tomorrow, so that after tomorrow we are at 0.75% interest rate. Now, if we look at the last times that this happened, the interest rates started to be raised, and the dollar index first was pumping an announcement of tightening, like the Fed is getting more tight with the monetary policy, or this is sometimes also called hawkish. So if the Fed is announcing that they will raise the interest rates, the dollar already starts pumping. But then when the interest rates are being already raised, the dollar at some point starts dumping. So we will have the same phenomenon now. The interest rates here will start to be raised, right? And the dollar index at some point, it might still pump, but at some point it will start brutally dumping. Now, why is that? Why could it be that the dollar index will be dumping very soon? Because of price expectations. Now, this is how the market works. The market is highly irrational and based on psychology. Please never make the mistake to think that the markets are intelligent. You overestimate the markets. The markets are driven normally by emotion, because they are driven mostly by retail investors who act on emotion, okay? So in our case, we have to understand that the federal fund rate will thus be deciding if we get a rally or not in the Bitcoin market. Now, in this meeting for the 4th of May, for tomorrow, the traders are expecting that the federal fund rate will be raised to at least 75 basis points with a probability of 99.8%. This is priced into the market, okay? This expectation means that this is already priced in. This is priced into the dollar index. That's why the dollar index is already pumping. So this is a 50 basis point rate hike. This means that after tomorrow, we would be at 0.75% interest rate. Now, if we go further to June, what do traders expect then? Well, they expect that after June, we will be at 150 to 175 basis points with a probability of 95.6%. That means that they expect that we will have at least 1.5% interest rate in June. So, what does that mean? That means that should the Fed not raise as aggressively in June, and that in June we are only at, say, 125 basis points, so this is 1.25%. 100 basis points, by the way, is 1%. So if in June we would only be at 1.25%, that already would be for the market a weird anomaly which the market is not expecting. Only 4.4% of traders expect that in June we are at 125 to 150 basis points. So most people expect the Fed to be very hawkish and aggressively raise the interest rates. Now, what happens if the Fed will only raise 50 basis points again in June, so that we are at 125 to 150? Well, friends, I can tell you what will happen. Because the traders have already priced in, as you can see, with an extremely high probability that the Fed will raise by 75 basis points in June, because now we are 25, then we get 50. The expectation is 50 on the 4th of May. And then 1 month later, on the 5th of June, the expectation is 75. So that if you add all this up, we are at 150. But if the Fed would raise only 50 basis points in June, what will happen then, friends? I can tell you what will happen. The dollar will dump massively. Because everyone is expecting the Fed to be insanely hawkish. And if now the Fed only raises by 50 basis points in June, this is very well below the market expectation. You see, only 4.4% of people expect this. So the vast majority of the market is overestimating the aggressiveness of the Fed. So if the Fed raises only by 50 basis points in June, I can tell you the dollar index will be dumping like crazy. And more so, I think that the dollar index will actually even be dumping tomorrow on the 4th of May, when the announcement will be made that we will get a 50 basis point interest rate hike. Why? Because this is already priced in. This is not bullish news. This is already priced into the market, and we have this insane resistance here, this insane resistance line, and we have also this long-term bearish divergence in the dollar index. And now what happens when the Fed only raises by the expected 50 basis points? Because it has been already priced in, it's the good old sell the news. Buy the rumor, sell the news. So what happens? Traders will say, 50 basis points, this has been expected. I kind of expected more, So what you have already been expecting is nothing special anymore. So I can already think that the dollar index will actually start dumping on the 4th of May. And then if in June the Fed raises only by 50 basis points, this is well below the expectation of the market, who expects a 75 basis point hike with a probability, as we saw, of 95%. Man! So this is how the market works. The market is highly irrational and prices already in future expectation. It prices in future expectation. And if these future expectations are only met, or even worse, not met, what does that mean? It means sell the news. And this means that the dollar index, which is super overextended, will dump. And that in turn means that I see a very high likelihood that the dollar index either dumps now, already tomorrow, on the 4th of May, or pumps for a few more weeks and then dumps afterwards in the mid of June, because I personally see no way that the Fed would be so insane as to raise 75 basis points in June, because they know that this will crash the entire market. They have to walk the tightrope, they have to walk on the edge somehow between causing a recession. If they raise too much, they cause a recession. If they don't raise enough, the inflation will continue to go rampant. So they have to walk this tightrope all the time. and I think they will never raise more than 50 basis points in June. So the market is overestimating the strength of the dollar index and is pricing in a too aggressive Fed, which in my opinion will not materialize. So that is the logic behind the market. We have now understood why the Fed is basically deciding the direction of the crypto market. So the dollar index will either start dropping tomorrow or in the mid of June. And if that happens, friends, if that happens, we can look forward to a really nice time in the crypto market, friends. We can look forward. Let me just load the long-term chart here. What will happen then? So let's say the Fed does what is expected tomorrow and raises by 50 basis points. This is super expected. So the dollar index, in my opinion, will already start dumping. But if for whatever reason the dollar index will not dump as much as we would like, but instead will continue to pump for a few more weeks until the mid of June, then we can expect a bit more downward pressure and we might retest this trend line here some point in the next weeks. We might go to 36,000 or something like that. And it might even be that we go below this trend line just to shake out some newbie traders, just to create a bit of panic in the market. We might go down to this level here in case the dollar index pumps. And then afterwards, I see that after the June meeting, the Fed will not raise by 75 basis points, but only by 50. And then the dollar index will dump like crazy. And then at the latest, the huge rally of this year will begin. That is my picture for now. But if the dollar index, as I suspect, will already start dumping tomorrow, then this will be even nicer. Because then we will not retest this line here, and then Bitcoin will already just start pumping already tomorrow and pump and pump and pump, and this pump will continue as long as the dollar index is falling. So we will go and retest the upper trend line here, the upper resistance line of our long-term channel. And I have often said, and I can just repeat, in this case we will go to around 230 or 240,000 by the end of the year, by November, December, or January 2023. And this in turn means that many coins will pump like crazy. And in the next videos, I will talk about specific coins, how much I think they will pump. We will go through a few coins, Ethereum, we will go through Cardano, we will go through Solana, we will go through XRP, we will go through Dogecoin. We'll go through a few coins, and I will make specific videos about each and every single one of these coins so that we can understand what prices we can expect if the dollar index will start dumping, which for the reasons that I told you right now, I think will be the case. So friends, I think very good times are coming. We have to be a bit more patient. By the latest, in the mid of June, the dollar index will start dumping like crazy and Bitcoin will start pumping like a freaking berserk. Okay, it will be nice times, in my opinion. As always, friends, this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. I was wrong in the past. My friends, I hope I could explain you the logic behind the Fed funds rate and why the Fed is basically deciding right now if we will get an insane crypto pump later this year or not. And I think the odds for a crypto pump and that the dollar index will dump are pretty good. I would say at least 75%, in my opinion. So friends, I hope you learned something. This is always very fascinating. The psychology of the markets is fascinating stuff. I wish you a nice day and see you in the next video.